According to Polymer, web components mean four things: templates, custom elements, shadow DOM, and HTML imports. The idea behind HTML imports is that you can package your whole component as pieces of, like, here's my template, here is inline JavaScript script to make it all work, and here is CSS that's only going to apply to this component. It's not going to leak anywhere. And if you look at the Polymer docs, a lot of their authoring format is going to be done as kind of like pieces of HTML. So of course it makes sense that they would want to have HTML imports. Templating is an interesting one because it's definitely inspired by kind of like older mustaches, um, even like PHP and all that stuff, where a template is just a thing that has a few holes, right? So it doesn't have conditional logic, it doesn't have loops or anything like that. It's just take this thing, put it inside of this thing, and you might have like a few slots where you put stuff in. In Polymer, I think it was the tag name was content. Now it's obviously slots, and it's interesting that like even it's interesting that the idea behind it was that because we will add it to the browser, it's going to be so much faster. But you also add it to the browser JavaScript, and JavaScript is also fast. So even lead, which is kind of like what happened after Polymer, right? Even lead is not using templates to do their kind of like day-to-day templating, right? They use template literals, which are doing a lot of the same things, but just not using kind of like DOM to do that. They're using JavaScript. So yeah, so it's interesting that like from times of Polymer, the the HTML imports didn't happen. The templating kind of did happen, but not as much as they would hoped, right? Because all the frameworks, they will still need to have real templating apart from the one that you have. So the template tag could only be used for slots in a web component. And again, kind of like no conditional logic, no loops, anything like that. So it's much more kind of like simpler thing, which half delivered, I guess. So yeah, so like HTML imports were not delivered. Template tag was kind of like half delivered. The parts that everyone liked were that it's not rendered, and it's not like script tag or a style tag where you can just display block or display flex on it and it will show the content, right? It's like it's never going to be delivered. It's just for DOM manipulations. And so custom elements, uh, I think they kind of happened. I think a lot of people use custom elements, and HTML web components is a thing where you can use custom elements as just a primitive to connect a bit of HTML, a bit of JavaScript, I guess, with a tag. Yeah, so even custom elements, not everyone's completely happy with that. A lot of those ideas are now trying to kind of like get into reality with custom attributes, so that like the same element could have like a multiple behaviors assigned to it, and shadow DOM, right? Like the shadow DOM is the most kind of like complicated one that still got merged, right? And if depending on who you ask, people think that it got successfully merged, and it works exactly as intended. Don't mind all the issues where it doesn't. So And again, like HTML web components is a like a movement of like, well, let's just pretend that like web let's just pretend that Shadow DOM didn't happen, and let's not talk about it. um, uh, which I think just like yesterday, custom registries for Shadow DOM dropped, so that will allow you to have like multiple implementations assigned to the same tag name. So you can have like my button, and depending on like where that my button is included in your document, it will pick up like different implementation, which again, like again, only the feature that you can use inside of Shadow DOM. So a lot of a lot of dependencies on Shadow DOM. It's like, oh, cool. If only this feature wasn't depending on the Shadow DOM, I might have been using it. Um, yeah, so it's probably like the most controversial, but the part that everyone kind of like knows the most about web components is like, oh, web components, is that the thing where you do Shadow DOM, right? Is that where all the rules are different? Everything is kind of shadowy and not real. Um, yeah, it's interesting.